Great. All right, let's get started. This session is titled Technology Driving Society Innovation. Originally, we had the title Technology Driving Social Innovation, but then everyone thought this whole panel would be about Facebook and Twitter and whatever, because that, for a lot of people, that's 90% of their lives. So society innovation is about how all these technologies have actually affected society in general across different elements. And one of the speakers we have that we've added, and I'm not sure if you guys have the latest agenda, is we have Generali, which is the largest insurance firm in France. Is it Europe? Oh, the second largest, but they're going to be larger soon, right? And insurance is something that touches every one of our lives, so it's actually a big part of society. So what I'm going to do now is introduce the moderator, and then he'll introduce each of the panelists or let them introduce themselves. So I'd like to introduce Niels from YouNoodle. YouNoodle is a startup company started by some young people, all around 30s or younger, which is a platform to connect corporations, organizations, and entrepreneurs. And to give you an example, one of the things that YouNoodle does is they actually run the Startup Chili competition. So Startup Chili actually gives like $200,000 to any of the startups that are chosen to go to Chile and start up a company there in order to bring talent and promote innovation in Chile. So YouNoodle runs that. One thing about Niels is he's Danish. The other co-founders are Danish, and the fiance of the CEO is Danish. So I think there's something to be said about Danish must be really good.
Thank you very much. So I'm here on behalf of the Danish mafia, obviously, living in San Francisco. But there are about 500 Danes in San Francisco and about 5,000 in the Bay Area. So being that we're only 5.5 million people in Denmark, I think that's pretty good. Thank you for being able to moderate this panel today. I'm going to do a short introduction of YouNoodle and myself, and then I'm going to hand it over to our panelists here who are going to introduce themselves. We're going to talk about today what are the most innovative and disruptive technologies within each of these panelists' fields, and we're going to talk a little bit about how these technologies or innovative and disruptive technologies can be monetized and how entrepreneurs can help. So that's kind of some overarching themes that we will talk about. Quick thing on YouNoodle, we help universities, and as Gigi said, corporations and government agencies connect with young entrepreneurs. So we're really excited about being here and talking to you all. And something you can come and ask me about after this is done is, did I jump naked bungee jumping in Australia when I was 18? All right, that being said, and I have your attention now, I would like to introduce the panelists. So why don't we start with Gabriele on the end, and then we'll go from there. So please introduce yourselves, say what you do, and...
I'm Gabriele Gresta, president of Bebop, a deputy chairman of Digital Magics, an incubator of Italy, board member of BrainSpark, a stock-listed company in London, board member of Let's Byte, and my mom says I'm very cool. I invested, last year my group invested 16 million euro over the on the 90 million invested totally in Italy. So that's not because we are cool, it's because Italy has no innovation. And we cover from startup seeds to, let's say, first round and second round through all the 2 incubators that we own.
Hello, my name is Xavier Boileau. I am working for Generali. So Generali is the second largest general insurance company in France. It's a 16 billion euro company. And within this company, I'm in charge of an initiative called Generali Innovation. Generali Innovation is something led by two people, one from marketing, one from IT, with the idea of generating as much innovation within Generali as we can, and supporting the business units to create new things, new products, or new services for the company.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Quinn. I'm the European Director of Strategy and Operations for Wildfire Interactive. We're a company that's based out of Silicon Valley, Redwood City specifically. And essentially what we do is we help brands promote themselves and manage their content on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and other social platforms. We are one of the only platforms of our kind that's funded by Facebook. We're also aligned with Summit Partners, have been around since about 2008, have recently launched an office in London. We're about 150 people in the US, 12 in London. We're hiring our first director of sales in Paris, which we're very excited about, and we're looking at the German market as well. Very excited to speak to you today about innovation in society.
Hello, my name is Sebastian Wossagk. I'm investment partner with Acton Capital Partners. We are a VC fund based in Germany, in Munich, with a focus on consumer-oriented businesses in internet. So any businesses that have a very strong focus on the end user and the end consumer in the B2C space. It's a 150 million euro fund. We invest a lot in e-commerce and platforms, a bit in media as well, and mainly a bit later stage, so companies that already have some proven business model.
Hello, my name is Haddad. I'm leading Google Enterprise in France. So while Google, the traditional Google, is doing money with ads and as customers CMO, Chief of Marketing, we at Google Enterprise have as customers CIO, and we do money. We monetize our revenue by providing cloud computing services.
Thank you, guys. So since the mic was up here, I'll hand it to you. Eric, let me start by asking you. So in your opinion, what's the most interesting trend within the enterprise software that is driven by society innovation, and how will that impact corporations?
For sure, we say cloud computing. I think it's a fact today. Most of the CIOs we are meeting today, these are all customers, or point of contacts, are interested by cloud computing. It's sure that, let's say 2 years ago, they were interested by cloud computing because some people were talking about this and asking you should ask about cloud computing. But I think now we are in a cycle of decision. I mean, we are coming from a cycle of, let's say, a status of interest, and now we are in a status of a step of decision making. And I'm pretty sure that many companies will move forward, will let's say externalize at least their generic applications, and will use cloud computing as a utilities, as we use electricity or other energies. The second aspect second trend that we are, let's say, looking at the market is the mobility, the mobiles. We foresee that next year we'll sell more. I mean, the market will sell more mobiles than notebooks. So that means that we expect that access to information, access to application will be finally more from smartphones, from mobile than notebooks. And so with the cloud computing, you have everything to get your information and to get your application services, whatever you are accessing this information from a mobile or from a notebook or anything else.
Thanks. Next question is to Sebastian. So in your industry, VC, how do you see entrepreneurs taking advantage of the society-driven technology innovations to grow their business?
As I said, we invested in many e-commerce companies, many B2C companies. So for those companies, it's really important to get close to customers. And with all the communications taking place in social networks today, with all the possibilities of users to raising their voices independently from large platforms, with all those microblogs, et cetera, it's getting increasingly important for those companies to closely monitor what's going on there and to stay very close to their customers and to understand what their customers want. So those technologies allow, for example, e-commerce companies to engage with the customers in a completely new way. So it's not longer that you shout out products to people and hopefully they buy it, but you can engage with the people. You can engage around topics people are interested in. You can build up micro communities around the products that you sell and get ambassadors, as we had before, that basically do the advertising for you, but in a much smarter and better targeted way, because they're gonna advertise to their friends and the people they know, and they have a different trust level than you will have as a brand. So there's a whole lot of new possibilities as an e-commerce company, for example, to engage with the end customer and to learn from the end customer, to listen to the end customer, and to do marketing in a way that you haven't been able doing before, much more direct, much more targeted, much more to the point, and much more credible as well.
Sebastian, do you have any examples of portfolio companies that you manage that do exactly what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's a very nice example of a company that we invested in Sweden. What they do is they sell grocery bags to families, including the recipes you need to prepare those bags. You probably know those come from Denmark. So if you're working parents, you don't have to care about what you cook it tonight. You just get the bag delivered, you got the recipe in there, and then you just cook it and you're happy. And what they have a very, very active Facebook community around those recipes, because recipes are a part of everyday's life that is quite important to people. And they almost managed to outsource the customer service to the community. So if somebody writes on the community on Facebook, listen, I don't understand the recipe, it seems that whatever ingredient is missing, or I don't know what to do with it, they don't have to answer that question. Within seconds, there will be 10 others out of the community answering that question. If somebody comes up saying, you know, I didn't get my bag, or the meat was missing, whatever, it's not the customer service answering, it's another consumer saying, you know, don't worry, it probably will come a bit later, my bag came later today as well, but it will arrive. And another one jumping in and saying, you know, it always comes and it will be fine, etc., etc. And obviously, this sort of customer service, it's cheaper in a way, of course, but it's much more credible to the end user because it's coming from the community and it's comforting people that actually, they get a service from a company they can trust, because there's so many people around that pitch in for that company and say and raise their voice for that company that they feel like, yeah, we're part of a big community.
Thanks. Next question is for Rebecca. So, you know, you're in a company that was largely built on social media and in particular Facebook. So, you know, in that space, and this is not about social media, but what do you think is the next big trend that will, you know, revolutionize society in a big way within the social media space?
Sure. So I think for us, what we really think is going to be key to the evolution of social media going forward will be analytics. There's really sort of a data revolution that's taking place. I think you could even say globally, and you've seen sort of the results of that over time. In the sense that there's more and more data that's available when it comes to interactions between individuals. There's social mapping that's taking place in ways that's never taken place before. You can start to anticipate the way that people will interact, will behave, will service one another, and I think that availability of data is going to really change the way that that companies converse with with their audience. There is a dialogue that's taking place. In the past, you've seen kind of a monologue where essentially a brand speaks to a consumer, and we're entering a space where consumers have the ability to speak back, and brands are having to adjust to that. The good news for them is that there's a lot of data available that helps them understand sort of where people stand, what their purchasing propensity is, how they interact with each other, And I think that the social media space will really, in many ways, be formed and also challenged by the fact that that data and information is available. So for me, I mean, obviously, we think that social is going to have a big impact on innovation going forward, but I think that the data that you're going to pull from that, Google is a great example. It's a company that's built on this sort of information and understanding of the power of numbers. I think it's going to really drive sort of the way we interact going forward.
So, delving a little bit deeper into the data part, there's a lot of challenges with, managing big data. We heard JP this morning talking about some of those challenges. So, how do you think companies and entrepreneurs can help solve those problems?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of really intelligent thinking going on around how to leverage data. It's one of the biggest challenges that the online community faces at the moment. You certainly saw it a few years back in the US when, despite the fact that masses of audiences, it was proven that masses of audiences were flowing into the online space, advertising was still more lucrative offline. And you're seeing that begin to change, I think, because companies are getting smarter about the way that they use data, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to take an amount of focus and an amount of sort of centralization. There are big companies out there like Omniture, for example, that are getting smarter and smarter about the way that they help their customers use data. I think there are smaller companies that are focused. I mean, ours, for example, knows that we are sitting on a platform of information that's going to be very useful to our customers one day, and we're very focused on that. Though today we help companies run promotions and we help them manage their feeds across a variety of social platforms. We're also gathering a massive data that over time will hopefully become very valuable and useful. I think the challenge that we'll all face, especially sort of being in this European context, is how do you make sure that you're using that in a benevolent way? How do you make sure that you're forward-facing and that you're very clear about the way that you're using data so that the environment and your audience knows and trusts that you're using their information for their benefit and not for their harm or disruption. But it's a very disruptive space, I think, at the moment, and there's a lot of opportunity there.
Thanks. So, Xavier, you come from a very traditional industry, the financial services industry, and in particular the insurance industry. So, what do you think are the most disruptive technologies or innovations that are societal driven within that space?
Okay, so within Generali, we run every now and then something that's called scenario planning, which is inventing. We have invented 20 different scenarios for the future, like what would be the life in 5 to 10 years from now. And we look at how it will disrupt our business model. So out of that, we have extracted a certain number of trends. Some of them have already been given, like mobility, social communities, sustainability, gamification. I will just give some sentence on two of them, trust and information. Information is an important trend for us because insurance is really based on asymmetry of information. It means the insurance company has far more information on the risk you have, is able to compute, let's say, your probability of having an event occurring to you, ability to compute what would be the price of this particular event, and ability then to price a coverage for it. And the problem we have is now we have a lot of new technologies that are reversing this information power to the consumer. I'll give you an example. A company called 23andMe. It's an American company. And it's a company where you can now, just for a couple of $100, you just spit into a small plastic cap. And you have your genome analyzed. And after, you have your probability of all your health disease with what you could do on it, what's the problem you may face in the future, etc. Which creates a problem for insurance company because now the customer has far more information of its own risk than the information that the insurance company could have. So this asymmetry of information is for us a very big issue. And I have a lot of other examples on a lot of other fields. So in terms of technology, what we are looking at or what we are hoping are technologies that will help us reverse a little bit this asymmetry of information and be able to analyze a little bit more the risk patterns of our customer to propose better risk or better pricing or better coverages.
So have you recently seen any innovative business models within the insurance industry that you could, as an example?
Yeah, we are seeing as well new, I would say, business model appearing on the market, which are more linked to a trend on social and community driven. It's the capacity for customers to just group together, and just if they know that they are a good risk or have good risk pattern, they may group together and ask for a bulk price to an insurance company. Insurance companies are based on mutualization of risk. It means statistically you have good and bad, you have risk, but they are mutualized over a big amount of people. If the good risk that they know they are good start to group together and ask for a better price, then we have a business model issue. So we have seen this kind of trend where you have, let's say, communities of people grouping together and creating some form of micro-mutual insurance, which is the roots of the insurance industry since 200 years, and starting to create new, I would say, new form of insurance that would be just micro-mutual insurance. So this may be as well an interesting trend that we are looking at.
Cool. So Gabriele, you're again in a completely different industry. So with your massive startup experience and the project that you're working on right now, and which you gave a great presentation of earlier, what's in your opinion, the most disruptive innovation that's currently happening between digital media and TV right now? And you can't say your own company.
Well, for sure, what we are seeing is that first we have to analyze the phenomenon that it's happening very faster than we thought about big groups moving money from the mainstream TV to different medias. And that's a brand new and big thing on television. Basically, what I see is the opportunity for new players to come in a scenario where, in a very dangerous scenario where Facebook wants to be the next TV for the planet. So, and it's a very tough challenge because it was very funny to see the strategy of these guys giving for free their content to everybody in the social space because they have to be in the social space. All of a sudden, realizing that Facebook is doing TV is not fair. I mean, U2 is launching the record on Facebook. Obama is starting the campaign on Facebook. So, well, welcome. So we are seeing a lot of hype into new models created out of this phenomenon. To understand this, I have to explain a little bit how the advertising model was working before. There was two main advertising space in the internet. There was a display that was basically the thing that you see on the top of the page, and it's a normal what is called banner. That it's not everyone sees the same banner. Why they do that? Because they don't want to measure it. It's sold, let's say, in a way that they don't want to measure it because they were selling this like this when they were working on TV. And then there's a new space that it's now on the side, on the bottom, or inside the text, that it's a new way to do advertising. This space is the most interesting one because we think that's the way where the money will go after the system will be, let's say, disrupted. There's new technology coming in, for example, premium advertising or behavioral advertising. We invested recently in a company that is called 4W that in 1.5 years became the market leader in premium advertising in Italy. We beat it Google. We have 71% of the premium advertising space just because the system is more effective and it's able to understand local logics. The semantic of local language and meaning it's very important. It's something that probably Google has some problems to address. So I see big changes on this space, and I hope the startups will concentrate on this.
Okay, great. So this is for the whole panel. So if we look beyond the social networks, so what is, in your opinion, the most interesting trend that we have going on right now with all the disruptive technologies that we've been talking about? And how does that impact the corporations?
Okay. If we're talking about social networks, you are stimulating polemics. Well, the only space I see is optimization. So there's giant space to be on the back of the giant and optimize things that they don't know how to do it, or they don't want to do it.
Can you be a little bit more specific? What do you mean?
Yeah, for example, there's a company called Ad Personam that is able to take a normal, let's say, game, social game, or whatever you do with apps, gadgets inside Facebook, and optimize the way the advertising is, the platform is communicating to the advertising of Facebook. So it's this management allow you to perform 10 times and to have 10 times the results you have normally if you advertise on Facebook. This is an example. There's so many that I can name. So probably this is a big space. But there are luckily fields where outside the social network, there's still life outside social networks.
That's good to know.
Yeah, like for example, augmented reality. Will be something very big very soon.
Okay. So with the rise of location-based services and micro-social financing, big data, we've heard about augmented reality today. Those are some of the other topics, I think, that are outside of the social network space. Thinking about those other categories, what do you guys think are, the most important trends within that, and how can entrepreneurs use those trends to build new businesses?
So, no, I'm joking. Yeah.
Please, anyone else?
I think a major trend on the social network is one part of that, but it's all about becoming more and more personal, and it's all about targeting your offer. It's no more like broadcasting mode where you shout out the same thing, the same offer, whatever you want to advertise to 1 million people, like in the TV or radio times. It's targeting one-to-one, knowing exactly what this individual cares about, what this individual is doing, what his behavior is, what his social graph is, what his specific hobbies are, and then try to target advertising or services to that individual. And that goes back to this data overload that you mentioned beforehand. Doing this obviously requires a whole lot of data and brings a lot of pros with that, because you won't be able to gather those data just at one source. In general, you need to follow the individual through the whole life on the internet and collect data on all different places, which obviously Google is quite good at doing, and Facebook is doing as well through the like button, so they can really track what you're doing and then have a very good profile on what you are for a person, and taking a social graph with that, try to target that. So I think in general, any companies that help to make it easier to better target individuals and advertising to individuals will be very successful in the future. There are two large, like Google and Facebook, that are very good at it, but I think there's a lot of things to be done independently from that to offer innovative solutions that outside of the Facebook and Google, etc. life allow to track what you're doing and classify you in terms of what sort of profile you are for targeted advertising.
Just Just to add on to that, I think that one area that's really poised for a huge amount of growth when it comes to this type of disruption is television. And not to sort of build off of what we've already talked about a little bit today, but it's when you talk about media and when you talk about innovation in media, it's incredible how many screens you can mention: your mobile phone, your iPad, your desktop, your laptop, but television rarely is mentioned. At least it's not mentioned as often as it should be. And I think if you look, I'm a bit biased being American, clearly from the accent. If you look in the States, you're seeing more and more motion towards, how your television can become connected. And as TVs become more and more connected, you'll start to think more and more not only about how you can speak to people in a very kind of segmented and targeted way through mobile devices or through iPhones, iPads, etc., but also through your television. And I think there's a huge space for innovation there. It's an area where people have been thinking, smart people have been spending time, but it's really an area I think that's poised for a lot of activity.
Talking about enterprise customers, we should start by coming back to basics. Meaning that in the past, IT was better at work than at home, and today it's absolutely the opposite. So we have better IT tools at home than in the job. So, but we need to not forget that an employee is also a consumer. So, and everything we could do to help the employee, so the consumer and the employee, which is the same, to have a better life at work by having the right tools, by having the right continuity in terms of services, in terms of information, will help the market. And so when you consider that today, IT is spending at least 80% of the money just to patching, for repairing infrastructure, and not on businesses, and not on users, you can see that we have many progresses to do to improve the level of service for the internal customers of the CIO, the users that we are today. And so I think that there is a space to invest for entrepreneurs by doing this life better for the employees.
So in talking about that, does any examples come to mind as these tools and new services for employees and consumers?
For sure, I can talk about the one from Google. For sure that when you are using a Gmail or a social network, whatever it is, and you have this kind of tools also at work, it helps a lot because you don't have any gap between what you use at home and what you use at work. When you can share a document with team members, with partners, you can share the same document, you can work on the same document. Instead of just sending a file in attachment by mail, it's a good example of how we should collaborate at work, which is close to what you have today at home. If you imagine that in the near future that we have a kind of social network for the enterprise, meaning that you can collaborate or dialogue between team members of the same job by circle or by group, it will help. As it helps today by talking with friends when we are at home. So this kind of example is so basic that we use this every day as a consumer. We should take this as well at work, and this is what I expect from entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So in the interest of time, I think it would be good to have some audience participation. So any of you out there sit with or want to ask any of the panelists a specific question, please go ahead.
It's a comment and a question, which is that since we're talking about social innovation, let's not forget the social piece of it, which is, we tend to look at things from a technology standpoint first, right? But behind every technology problem is a business problem, and then behind every business problem is a human problem. So what are the ways that you can think about how do we bring the customer point of view, whether it's a consumer or more of a B2B customer, how do you bring that into the equation so that you're actually designing things that people want as opposed to just throwing stuff out and hoping it sticks?
Okay, I guess I'll take that one. I guess, and this goes a bit back to, I guess, my comment before, which is that there is a lot of data available on how people are interacting and what they're doing. And I think that that really this stage it's on sort of the each enterprise as a group to make a point of leveraging the data that's out there in a smart way, and that's very easily said and not as easily done. But at the end of the day, the great thing about the social networks that are out there, I mean, Facebook, not to plug them, but they just launched a new Insights platform, which allows for more and more understanding, a greater and greater understanding of how users are interacting with a Facebook page, for example. And there's a lot of insight to be gained there. There's a lot of testing that can be run. There's a lot of sort of concept discussions that can be had, assuming that the company, a brand, for example, is A, willing to have that conversation in public, and B, willing to kind of leverage the data available to do it in a smart way. I don't know if that answers your question, but...
Can I say something politically correct? Thank you. Yeah, okay. What people think is very important, and that saves me from any critics. But very often, the people, it's something that it's really misunderstood, and also it's misleading. If you think about the internet, very soon everyone will be expressing everything about everything, and everyone will be commenting things. So you will be overflown of information, and we are passing from a period where we are searching for information to a period where we have to select information. If you follow what the people thinks, you will be all of a sudden facing, let's say, opinions that are changing at the light speed due to the social environment, due to what television says, what the political reference is telling in this moment, and so on. So I think what we were discussing before in the panel about social e-commerce and social networks is that you have to find the right balance between the person that it wants something with the person who can give it something. And it has to be a win-win situation. You cannot follow 100% what people want, because they don't want. They don't really know what they want, or there are companies that are investing millions of dollars to make people think about something. Okay, so it's very difficult already to understand if there's a huge part of the marketing, new hype marketing, taught in university. It's called buzz marketing, how to influence people inside their own social space. Okay, so at the end, if there's General Motors that wants me to believe in something, probably I will believe it, because I will find 10,000 people that likes this car, even if it's crap. So in this environment, probably the most wise thing is to conceive the technologies that allow these two entities to work, to find a balance. Okay, and there's also a good money to make over it.
I would just comment on something a little bit different, which is you spoke about the importance of the human factor. So I will just comment a little bit on usability. We find it more and more important from our point of view to have applications that are usable, which means the technology or innovation is supposed to simplify the life of people and not making it more complex. And right now, with the overflow of information coming from a lot of places, what we are looking at in terms of technology are things that are making it simple. One of a person from Google has spoken about social network for the company. We are really looking at this kind of technologies that make it more simple for people from our company to work together, and making more simple to understand the data they are working on, simplify the way you can view trends, etc., etc. So we are really looking at things where the technology aspect disappear and the usability is really taken into account.
Thank you. Other questions? Gigi, did you have a question? Nope. Up there.
I'm coming to grab the mic because I don't know if people will hear.
I think we can hear you.
Okay. It was just a remark, actually, and a question. So I'm from a corporate IT background originally, and when I hear you, I'm a bit surprised by something, actually. I think so social media, obviously very important, social commerce is fine, but if you don't manufacture a good product, if your internal processes are not good, you can spend as much money as you want on the internet, but because what you deliver is not right, anyway, you will have some problems. So that's why I'm a bit surprised by what, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, Mr. from Google said, because you just said before that the tools used by corporation, the IT tools are not very good, basically, that there are lots of improvements to be done. And right now in the IT world, we mostly hear about clouds, because it really delivers value. But in the end, I don't think it really improves the usability of the software which are used internally in companies. So I would like to know what are the trends right now? What are the other things that exist? What are the other improvements? And is there any improvement in the usability of the internal software of corporation? That's it.
Yeah. Talking about consumer and employee, I was talking about usages. I think the usages at home are better than the ones that we have at work. It's a fact, you know. I'm also an employee, and for sure, the tools are more friendly at home than at work. Generally speaking, I'm not talking about all the corporations. This is the first point. Second point, when we talk about cloud computing, the cloud computing is not the solution. The cloud computing is just a way to manage IT resources. Okay, the innovation is in the model, not in the technology. So we manage the IT resources to finally say, okay, this is done by this provider, let's say it's Google, whatever the provider, and I will focus as an IT manager my spans, my effort, my resources on the business needs. So that means that I will focus on what the corporate is requesting in terms of business. I will focus on helping my company to develop the business by bringing the kind of business applications that my corporation is needed to develop the business. This is just the point I was mentioning. So the cloud computing is not a solution. It's just a way to, let's say, externalize some commodities and focus on the business.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. No, we don't have any time for any more questions. So with that being said, thank you very much. Big round of applause to my panel here.